Chapter 3. The Second Jar. Next day, I must say, was very amusing. I spent the whole of it in the fields, just strolling about and sitting down as the fancy took me, listening to what went on in the trees and hedges. I will not write down yet the kind of thing I heard, for it was only the beginning. I had not yet found out the way of using the new power to the very best advantage. I felt the want of being able to put in a remark or a question of my own every now and then, but I was pretty sure that the jar which had linguam on it would manage that. Very nearly all the talking I heard was done by the birds and animals, especially the birds, but perhaps half a dozen times as I sat under a tree or walked along the road, I was aware of voices which sounded exactly like those of people, some grown up and some children, passing by or coming towards me and talking to each other as they went along. Needless to say, there was nothing to be seen, no movement of the grass and no track on the dusty road, even when I could tell exactly where the people who owned the voices must be. It interested me more than anything else to guess what sort of creatures they were, and I determined that the next jar I should try should be the eye one. Once, I must tell you, I ventured to say good morning when I heard a couple of these voices within a yard of me. I think the owners must nearly have had a fit. They stopped dead. One of them gave a sort of cry in surprise, and then, I believe, they ran or flew away. I felt a little breath of wind on my face, and heard no more. It wasn't, as I now know, that they couldn't see me, but they felt much as if you would if a tree or a cow were to say good afternoon to you. When I was at supper that evening, the cat came in, as she usually did, to see what was going. I had always been accustomed to think that cats talk when they mew, dogs when they bark, and so on. It is not so at all. Their talking is almost all done, except when they are in a great state of mind, in a tone which you cannot possibly hear without help. Mewing is for the most part only shouting without saying any words. Purring is, as we often say, singing. Well, this cat was an ordinary nice creature, Tabby, and in she came and sat watching me while I had soup. To all appearance, she was as innocent as a lamb, but no matter for that. What she was saying was something of this kind.
Get on with it, do. Shove it down. Lap it up. Who cares about soup? Get to business. I know there's fish coming.
When the fish actually came, there was a great deal of good feeling shown at first.
Oh, how much we have to be thankful for, all of us, have we not? Fish, fish, what a thought. Dear, kind, generous people all around us, striving to supply us with what is best and pleasantest for us.
Then there was a silence for a short time. Then, in a somewhat different tone, I heard,
Oh dear, the longer I live, the wiser I find it is not to expect too much consideration from others. Self-love. How few, how terribly few are really free from it. The nature that knows how to take a hint, how rare it is.
Another short silence, and then,
There you go, another great bit. I wonder you don't choke or burst. Disgusting. A good scratch all down your horrible fat cheek is what you want. And I know some cats that would give it to you. No more notion of how to behave than a cockroach.
About this time I rang the bell and the fish was taken away. The cat went too, circling around the maid with trusting and childlike glances, and I heard her saying in the former tone,
"Well, I dare say, after all, there are some kind hearts in the world, some that can feel for a poor, weary creature, and know that a great deal of strength and nourishment even the least bit of fish can give."
and I lost the rest. When the time came and the box was open once more, I duly anointed my eyes and went to the window. I knew something of what I might expect to see, but I had not realized at all how much of it there would be. In the first place, there were a great many buildings, in fact, a regular village, all about the little lawn on which my window looked. They were, of course, not big. Perhaps 3 feet high was the largest size. The roofs seemed to be of tiles, the walls were white, the windows were brightly lighted, and I could see people moving about inside. But there were plenty of people outside too, people about 6 inches high, walking about, standing about, talking, running, playing some game which might have been hockey. These were on level spaces, for the grass, neatly kept as it was, would have come halfway up their legs, and there were some driving along smooth tracks in carriages drawn by horses of the right size, which were really the most charming little animals I ever saw. You may suppose that I should not soon have got tired of watching them and listening to the little treble buzz of voices that went on, but I was interrupted. Just in front of me, I heard what I can only call a snigger. I looked down and saw 4 heads supported by 4 pairs of elbows leaning on the windowsill and looking up at me. They belonged to 4 boys who were standing on the twigs of a bush that grew up against the wall and who seemed to be very much amused. Every now and again, one of them nudged another and pointed towards me, and then for some unexplained reason they sniggered again. I felt my ears growing warm and red. "Well, young gentlemen," I said, "you seem to be enjoying yourselves." No answer. "I appear to be so fortunate as to afford you some gratification," I went on, in my sarcastic manner. "Perhaps you would do me the honour of stepping into my poor apartment." Again, no answer, but more undisguised amusement. I was thinking out a really withering remark when one of them said, "Do look at his nose. I wonder if they know how ridiculous they are. I should like to talk to one of them for 5 minutes." "Well," I said, "that can be managed very easily, and I assure you I should be equally glad of the opportunity. My remarks would deal with the subject of good manners." Another one spoke this time, but did not answer me.
"Oh, I don't know," he said. "I expect they're pretty stupid. They look it. At least this one does."
"Can they talk?"
said the third. "I've never heard them." "No, but you can see them moving their jaws and mouths and things. This one did just now."
I saw how it was now, and becoming cooler, I recognized that these youths were behaving very much as I might have done myself in the presence of someone who I was sure could neither see nor hear me. I even smiled. One of them pointed at me at once.
"Thought of a joke, I suppose. Don't keep it all to yourself, old chap."
At this moment, the fourth, who had not said anything so far, but seemed to have been listening, piped up.
"I say, I believe I know what it is that makes that hammering noise. It's something he has got in his clothes."
I could not resist this. "Right again," I said. "It's my watch, and you're very welcome to look at it." And I took it out and put it on the windowsill. An awful horror and surprise came to their faces. In a second they had dived down like so many ducks. In another second I saw them walking across the grass, and each of them threw his arms around the waist or neck of one of the elder people who were walking among the houses. The person so attacked pulled himself up and listened attentively to what the boy was saying. The particular one I was watching looked towards my window and then burst out laughing, slapped the boy on the back and resumed his walk. The boy went slowly off towards one of the houses. One or two of the other men came and stood nearer to the window, looking up. I thought I would venture a bow, and made one rather ceremoniously. It did not produce much effect, and I could not at the moment think of anything I could do that would show them quite clearly that I saw them. They went on looking at me quietly enough, and then I heard a deep, low bell, seemingly very far off, toll 5 times. They heard it too, turned sharply around, and walked off to the houses. Soon after that, the lights in the windows died down, and everything became very still. I looked at my watch. It was 10 o'clock. I waited for a while to see if anything would happen, but there was nothing. So I got some books out, which took a few minutes, and before I settled down to them, I thought I would just take one more look out of the window. Where were all the little houses? At the first glance, I thought they had vanished, but it was not exactly so. I found I could still see the chimneys above the grass, but as I looked, they too disappeared. It was done very neatly. There was no hole, the turf closed in upon the roofs as they sank down, just as if it was of India rubber. There was not a trace left of houses or roads or playgrounds or anything. I was strongly tempted to go out and walk over the site of the village, but I did not. For one thing, I was afraid I might disturb the people of the house, and besides, there was a mist coming up over the meadows which sloped away outside the garden. So I stopped where I was. But what a very odd mist, I began to think. It was not coming in all in one piece as it should. It was more in patches or even pillars of a smoky grey, which moved at different rates, some of them occasionally standing still, others even seeming to go to and fro. And now I began to hear something like a hollow whispering coming from their direction. It was not conversation, for it went on quite continuously in the same tone. It sounded more as if something was being recited. I did not like it. Then I saw what I liked less. 7 of these pillars of mist, each about the size of a man, were standing in a row just outside the garden fence. And in each I thought I saw 2 dull red eyes, and the hollow whispering grew louder. Just then I heard a noise behind me in the room, as if the fire irons had suddenly fallen down. So they had, and the reason why they had was that an old horseshoe which was on the mantelpiece had, for no reason that I could see, tumbled over and knocked them. Something I had heard came into my mind. I took the horseshoe and laid it on the windowsill. The pillars of mist swayed and quivered as if a sudden gust of wind had struck them, and seemed all at once to go farther off, and the hollow murmur was no longer to be heard. I shut the window and went to bed, but the last thing I looked out once again. The meadow was clear of mist and bright beneath the light of the moon. As I lay in bed, I thought over what I had seen last. I was quite sure that the pillars of mist concealed some beings who wished me no good. But why should they have any spite against me? I was also sure that they wanted to get into the house. But again, why? You may think I was slow in the wits, but I must confess that some few minutes passed before I guessed. Of course, they wanted to get hold of the box with the 5 jars. The thought disturbed me so much that I got up, lighted a candle, and went to the cupboard to see if all was safe. Yes, the box was there, but the cupboard door, which I knew I had locked, was unfastened. And when I had to turn the key, it became plain that the lock was hampered and useless. How could this have come about? Earlier in the evening it had been perfectly right, and nobody had been in the room since I locked it last. Whoever had done it, they had made the cupboard no safe place for the box. I took it into the bedroom, and after a few minutes' thought cleared out a space in the suitcase which I had brought with me, locked it in that, and put the key on the ring of my watch chain. Watch and all went under my pillow, and once more I got into bed.